You're listening to KSCO, serving Davenport, Carmel, and Tasajaro Hot Springs.
It's approaching 35 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. We're changing horses here this morning. As you very well know, a few years back, I became a citizen because I wanted to be able to vote locally. And we don't cover politics in this radio program because it's a program about local issues and local matters and fun. And one of the reasons that I became a citizen, and you have to understand that that's a very big deal for somebody to do, which is to step away from their own base of where they're from and become part of the base of another country, is super, super important. So I didn't make that decision lightly at all. And what had caught my attention was the brouhaha that was going on in the San Lorenzo Valley in the water department. Now, to quote Michael Olson, whiskey's for drinking and water is for fighting. And we all know darn well that water is an issue that is affecting the entire Central Coast in various and sundry ways, whether it's seawater intrusion, whether we're talking about desalination, whether we're talking about restrictions in water, whether we're talking about water storage, and we don't seem to have gotten very far on that as far as Santa Cruz is concerned, but that's for another day. And it's a subject that is very dear to my heart on all counts in all locations because water is life. And the San Lorenzo Valley Water District, in my opinion, ran amok, and I certainly covered it well and deeply because it was important and it is important. And we do have an election that is coming up, and it's going to be in November. And yes, I was asked, a number of people asked me if I would run. Two reasons. One, no, and two is no. And the reasons I'll know is A, because of the time involved in that, and B, because of the interaction that I would have to have with certain members of the San Lorenzo Valley Water Department who have been in here in this very studio. And I didn't get on with the general manager very well, and I just know me well enough to know that that would have been the wrong thing to do altogether, and I wouldn't want to mess it up for everybody. But apparently some people have their heads screwed on right, and they do want to run, and they are running, and they're running as a slate. Now, Lois Henry is here with us. Lois has been involved with water and water departments for a long time and has been in here a number of times with us to discuss some of the problems that we perceived. Good morning, Lois, and good to have you here.
Good morning, Rosie.
Bob Fultz is a local activist and has been following the San Lorenzo Valley water, and we'll get to his background in a little bit, but it's good to have you here, Bob, and well done for being so brave.
Well, thank you, Rosie. Great to be here.
And then on the lifeline, we have Stephen Swan, and Steve is known to me because he and I tabled, and not the last election, I think it was the one before, Steve, and we got to know each other then, and you, brave man, you've decided to run as well, so good morning to you.
Good morning, Rosie. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you all with us. Okay, it is a slate. We know what a slate is. It's people that are running in a similar position for, and they have similar viewpoints. So, and we'll start off with you, Lois, because it's ladies first, and why not? Why are you running, and why a slate? And I'm going to run that question to all three of you.
I'm running because I want to see change, and I have met a number of people in the last few months who have the same goals and desires as I do. And so that's why we decided to run as a slate, as we talked to each other and realized we want to make changes. We want to make good changes, more transparency, have the money, more, the way they spend money, they just kind of throw it around.
Like water? Do they spend it like water, Lois? Yes. They do.
like a drunken sailor.
Mm-hmm. So did you know these two other guys beforehand, before deciding to run? Or was this, were you casually acquainted? What was the scenario there?
I didn't really know them before, and I hadn't decided to run. But there were a number of people getting together who are unhappy about the way the district's been going. And we got to talking and realized that we had the same goals, the same things in mind, and we decided to run as a slate because we thought we could have more power to make changes, the kind of changes we'd like to see.
Okay, so Bob, you're next up.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. The reasons are very similar. I think if you look at a lot of the decisions that the board has made over the last 3.5 years that they've been in office, starting with spending money on lawsuits that really should never have been prosecuted, raising the rates to a really astronomical level, but not really seeing a lot of output out of those rates increases in terms of capital improvements and repairs to the system. All of these things combine just to say we need some changes. And then when you overlay that with how the board interacts with the public in a way that you would want it to be a little bit more respectful, and that's what we're going to bring to the board when we're elected. Respectful engagement, I think, is what we call it. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree, but you're definitely going to have a conversation that is agreeable, that isn't going to devolve into the kind of thing that the board has done over the last 4 years. So we're really looking forward to engaging with the community during this campaign, and hope that people will send us a lot of questions so they understand where we're coming from.
Good. Okay. And Steve, your go. Why did you decide to run? Because you and I, we spent quite a lot of time together tabling outside Ben Lomond Market, and I personally was happy to see you pick up the ball and run with it. But why run now?
Well, Rosie, just a little while ago, a man knocked on my door and asked me for a small donation towards the local swimming pool. I gave him a glass of water. If our water rates keep rising, I might not be able to be so generous in the future. Just in the time that I've been in the Valley, my rates alone have gone up over 400%. And just as you and I got together and tabled back in 2013 and began trying to fight back to the board, it's time again. And because of coming into contact with Bob and Lois and finding out that there is an opportunity for us and for the entire Valley to finally make a change, and that's going to be by putting a slate of 3 on the board and being able to take control and drive the board in the directions to make the right decisions that it hasn't been making in the past decades. And so I think it's a great opportunity and one that I just couldn't pass up.
Well, good. I'm always impressed when people decide to make the effort, because I think because all of you have been watching the board and looking at what they're doing, you realize that it's a big time commitment. And it's actually an honor commitment, because it's local. What you're doing is going to affect us immediately. It's not like anything that's happening on a statewide level in Sacramento or national level in Washington, D.C. This is local, and this is what matters at the end of the day. It's as important as a city council vote to me, the water department, and as we said, the whiskies for drinking and all that good stuff. Now, we just had the grand jury report that came out that I didn't read the whole thing, but I read a bit of it, and there is no trust. I don't trust the board as it stands right now at all. I don't trust the general manager, and I don't trust what the board says. I think that they are rude. I think they are disrespectful to the individuals who are actually paying for their salaries that they earn. I'm not saying it's a big salary, but I'm just saying that rudeness needs to be out of the way here. So let's start off with you, Bob. How would you see that the report was headed encouraging the flow of information to the public? What would you change from what they're doing right now?
Well, I think there's a number of facets that need to change, and change fairly quickly. First of all, the website is very hard to navigate.
Oh, it's so fascinating, though. You can waste your time for hours on that website.
You can. And that kind of needs to be redone so that the information is a lot easier to get to. I think the interesting thing, I attended the meeting last night, and I think the interesting thing about the review that the board did for the grand jury report is they put together an ad hoc committee to write the response and then bring that back to the board. Just an example of what we would do different, we would not do an ad hoc committee, which is not bound by the Brown Act. They can work in that without taking a lot of public input during the process of their meetings, we would do something very different. First of all, we agree with the grand jury report and all of their findings and all of their recommendations. But even beyond that, you still need to have a formal response. We would have a open process for that, bringing the community in and actually getting the input during the process of writing the response. That's not going to be done in this case. They took some input last night. They'll take some before they vote on it. But you know, the whole process of going through the written part of it is going to be hidden from the public, and that's just not right.
Okay, Steve, we had the unfortunate retirement from the board of Eric Hammer. He retired due to health reasons, and we wish him well indeed. And we've seen an appointment made by the board to fill that space. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know, John, the fellow that's been nominated and accepted the position to fill in the gap, but I feel that he seems to be, from what I understand, a member in common thinking with the current board and those forces that influence the board. And so I think it's basically going to be more of the same.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I mean, Lois, I do know you have a long history of dealing with water boards and the Brown Act and that sort of thing. You were the board president of the year by the California Special District Association, and you are a person who understands the finances and the budgets and all of those good things. How come we allow politics, and I'm not talking about Republican and Democrat, I'm talking about the politics of water, to come into a board like that as it has now? Why do you believe that happened and that we didn't just move along by fixing the infrastructure? Why did all of this infighting happen?
Well, it seems many times when people get on a board, they become, what do I want to say, full of themselves. They're special. They don't feel like they can talk to the public for some reason. I don't understand how it gets political, but let's face it, being on a water board is political. We're elected in a general election, and I try not to be political. I want to give straight answers to people. I want to mend fences with people. I want people to trust us. And that's one thing I want to bring back is trust. And when you're political, people don't trust you. They just automatically think, oh, this is all politics. And I see the board doing things right now, trying to fix issues at the last second.
There you go. Good. Well, we are going to take a break for traffic. You're listening to Good Morning Monterey Bay, 47 past 8. Here's Rick with your King of the Hill traffic update. It's 48 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. We are discussing with a slate of candidates who are going to be running this. They are running, and the voting will take place in November. I wanted to do this early because I had these questions. Okay. Lois Henry, Bob Fultz, and Stephen Swan running for the board. A question that I have is, and I would like every one of you to answer it, and we'll start off with you, Lois. We have infrastructure problems, and we don't have the funds because of the lawsuits. Too complicated to get into right now. How can we turn things around and start dealing with the actual problems that we have with the aging infrastructure of water storage facilities, of tanks, and of the pipes? How can we turn things around? And do you believe we can?
I believe we can, yes. I think that we need to repair things. We've got the money coming in now. I know that people want us to reduce rates, and I would love to do that. And we're going to be very careful with the money. We're not going to be throwing it around. Last night, they approved $76,000 to get environmental so they can get a loan with the USDA, a $5 million loan, and they've already spent or have agreed to spend $274,000 to have someone help them get this loan. So they want to get a $5 million loan. but they're spending more than $250,000 trying to get the loan. And if we get the loan, yes, there will be money that we can pay back, but they want loans and they want to do various things, but where's the money coming from? They have got to reduce costs.
Okay. All right. Bob.
Well, I think the biggest issue that we have right now is that if you look at the capital improvement plans over the last 15, 20 years, it's been pretty much the same projects. And one of the things I want to see the Water District do as soon as we get on the board is a thorough inventory of the entire system. We don't know what we have, how old it is, what has to be replaced, how much it's going to cost to replace it. And without that inventory, you can't have a fact-based, non-emotional discussion with the ratepayers and customers about what we're going to do. There's really two paths to go down in terms of financing it. It's either loans or bonds. And but you don't want to have that conversation until you understand how much is it that we have to spend over what period of time to replace what we have, and you can't do that until you have an inventory. This board has had almost 4 years to put that inventory together. It was an issue in the last campaign, and we still don't have that inventory. This is something that just has to be changed from the first meeting that we're seated.
Okay, good enough. And Steve?
Well, I think as both Lois and Bob referred to earlier, stop wasting money. Settle the lawsuits and costs alone last year, I think, in legal fees were $500,000. And when you have a situation where board members are being sued for malfeasance, and then the board is compelled to defend them and racking up the bills instead of settling lawsuits, and then when they do try to make a change and stop defending a previous board member, and they turn around and sue the board. So the board is suing the board at this point. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's nuts. So, settling lawsuits, making smarter deals. I mean, a lot of the deals that have been made over the past years regarding the acquisition of the Felton Water District, the defense of Vieira, the appealing of the judge's ruling in the Vieira case, I mean, they're all money wasters. We've got to start making smarter deals and just using common sense and business talents. I mean, there's a lot of business talents among the three of us. There's as Bob's good at math, there's over 200 years of experience between the three of us in working in business, solving problems, helping people, and finding solutions to things. And that's what I think the board needs an entire fresh makeup to address, the serious issues that are before us all in the valley.
You got it. You got it. All right. Well, I will just close this conversation by saying, hey, thanks for popping in. I do appreciate it. Once we had this new board in place, they felt it necessary to hire a public relations firm. That is a local company, very nice people. I know them very well. I've worked with them over the years, and every time they came in here, they came in and they were here to make sure that things did not go awry with the individuals in the building. But they're not bidding on a new contract. And I think I could probably just leave it on that point, that if a public relations firm is not bidding on a new contract, it must be because they probably have so much business they don't need it. I don't know. But that's just my own little point there. Lois Henry, Bob Fultz, Stephen Swan, thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm sure we'll talk more, but I just wanted to get an introduction in, and there you got it. You got it. Vote 3 if you agree, and I know I do. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rosie. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks. It is 55 minutes.